Well, we've seen some fabulous Test match cricket so far between England and West Indies, with England holding the upper hand, but full houses at Lord's and great crowds here at Trent Bridge. But, gentlemen, where is Test cricket at? What sort of state is the game in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it varies where you are in the world, and we'll come on to that. But I like where cricket is in general. The schedule wouldn't be so packed if people didn't want so much cricket, and we're lucky to have so many formats that people love and want to watch. The problem that has occurred, and this wise man to my left highlighted it a decade ago, is that one of those formats has become so popular it is slightly devouring the game. T20 is what a lot of people want. It's what a lot of fans want, it's what broadcasters want, because fans want it and TV audience, and because broadcasters want it, money goes in that direction, and when money goes in that direction, players go in that direction. So when one format becomes so large, it eats away at other formats, and that format is going to be Test match cricket in various parts of the world. And you've got to decide, do you want to save Test match cricket? Or is it you just throwing good money after bad? Do we want to save Test match cricket? And I do. I see that, you know, that the saying, don't just worry about the price of everything, the value of it as well. It's all about the money. This game becomes a bit dull for me. He did a paper review about the 100 and 51% share and 49% share. That means nothing to me. I want the value of the game. We are sitting at a cricket ground that you had Stuart Broad with the Stuart Broad end. And I remember Stuart Broad bowling from that end and get 8 for 15. And the reaction of this place when Stuart Broad was getting 8 for 15. We've just come from the ground that Jimmy Anderson stood, and the whole of the nation would just loved what Jimmy's done. I know Jimmy's our leading white ball wicket taker, but they love the blood and the sweat and the effort that he's put into Test match cricket. I was in that dressing room at the end, and I looked up and I saw Jimmy's teammates look at him in absolute awe for what he's done for Test match cricket and for them. I was out in the middle on this ground a long time ago watching Donald run into Michael Atherton. I had the best seat in the house.
And you sat there for a long period of time.
And I sat at the other end for a long time. And I can tell you, there was only one wicket in that spell when he gloved it and didn't walk. And there weren't many boundaries because us two were batting. But it was the most magnificent 40, 50 minutes of cricket I have witnessed from the other end. Donald going at him. And that's the value of something. You cannot put a price on it. And what worries me in our game is that we're putting a price on everything, and eventually those sort of days, those sort of cricketers, those sort of spells, they just diminish. And the West Indies rock up last week, undercooked, underprepared, and then the narrative goes, well, there you go. Test match cricket's dying. We told you so. They lost in 2.5 days. That really is a concern for me, because if you keep eating away with it, it's sort of self-perpetuating and it fuels itself.
Are people of a certain age old romantics about Test match cricket, or can it be regenerated? And if it needs saving, if that's your view, can it be saved?
Well, it is a view of a certain generation and a certain age, because we played it, we loved it, we value it. I do think, this is a personal view again, I do think the game will be a poorer game if it is only short form cricket, because of the reasons very well articulated there by Nas. Test cricket does have value. It brings us some of the great moments. Some of the Test cricket that we've seen over the last few years has actually been very good and very exciting. Last year's Ashes was as good an Ashes as we've had here in England since 2005. It was fantastic. But I have been pessimistic about the future for Test cricket ever since the IPL came along in 2008, because the incentives for players now are skewed towards short-form cricket and skewed towards franchise cricket. Incentives matter in life. It's all very well us talking about the value of something, but we did a documentary on young Shamar Joseph from Barakkara. Are you telling him that he can't go and play in the IPL? Absolutely not. He will. So incentives do matter, and incentives are skewed one way. That will challenge Test cricket. And the other reason is that, again, we're in a bubble here in England. We see a sell-out for most days of Test cricket, 4 days sold out most of the time. That is not the case, for example, in the Caribbean. You'd say, as a spectator sport, an in-venue spectator sport, Test cricket is dying or dead. That's not to say there's not interest, as Bish will tell you. There's a lot of conversation around it, but nobody in the ground. And that is a worry, because eventually, if you just see test matches played to empty stadiums, there's not much of a future for that.
There is still so much love for West Indies cricket around the world. That was absolutely on show in that victory in Australia. Absolutely on show when we've seen them fight back here. That is because of the cricketers that have come from West Indies and played test match cricket. That's why they're loved. Is the love for test match cricket in the Caribbean still strong?
I think it is. I think it is. I think some of the hardcore viewers and watchers and those interested has waned a little bit because of the lack of success of the team, and then you can go then to the economic disparities in the game where it affects the facilities in Sri Lanka, in the Caribbean. South Africa is another example of someone who put T20 cricket above a test match tour the other day for the life of it. And then you have players, as Michael rightly said and Nasser rightly said, who could be here and perhaps should be here, but have taken the other option for financial remuneration and all of that. But if you go online, when we had that second day play and West Indies batted well, and you go onto the blogs and you see the number of people commenting when the team doesn't do well, how much disappointment they voice, there's interest. But as I said to Michael before we came on here, the only lifeline I'll keep is if this team starts winning again, those people I'm hoping might come back to the grounds in the Caribbean. But for now, for Test cricket, it's too hard and too long and too many other things to do for them to pile into the venue.
I'll just pick you up on one thing you asked, Ath, not pick you up, but a point on it. I hear that a lot about it's for a certain age of people, certain demographic. That if you turn up to a test match, it's middle-aged, older men like us four watching it. If you put on, we do our figures on who watches our test match cricket, it is of people of a certain age. But your tastes change as you go through life. My boy 5 years ago, if I said to him, "You're coming today at Trent Bridge?" No way, Dad. Came here the other day. Yes, test match cricket's changed. That's what Stokes and McCullum's trying to do. He watched 416 all out, loved every single minute, and he'll come back. And your tastes change. When you're young, you may not come here. That's why you got T20, 100, whatever, and then you get them in that way, and that's the way you get them. Like the theatre, you know, my mum, when I was young, my mum turned to me and go, "You're going to the theatre?" Mum, I'd rather chew my leg off, to be honest. But now, yeah, I'll go, because my life and my style and the pace of you live your life changes. So don't just presume all these people and all of us are going to die off, and with that, test match cricket will die off. Get them in that other format, and then introduce them to this format, and then you'll have them for life. If you just got rid of this, and it was just T20 cricket, I think it would be pretty dull.
Well, there's a complete imbalance, obviously, in the finances of the game for various different reasons and various different countries. I'm just going to show you a quote from Johnny Grave, who's the Chief Executive of Cricket West Indies, who's very good on this subject, I think. One of his quotes is, "If the game works together and has a collective mindset, there is plenty of money to go around to ensure the game can thrive." Do you agree?
Yes, but what's happened over the last 30 years is that the game has gone from a spectator-first game to a television-first game. And with the rise of satellite television has come huge increase in finances for three countries in particular: India, England and Australia. So for example, when I played against Bish, we're talking a fair while ago now, there wouldn't have been a huge disparity in what I was being paid for a test match and what Bish was being paid for a test match, because there wasn't that much money in the game, full stop. But in the last 20 years, England, Australia and India are earning huge revenues, principally from satellite television, but obviously from other areas as well. And the problem for the Caribbean is that it's a high-cost, low-income region. They don't generate huge television revenues because it's a relatively small region, small population, and the cost of hosting touring teams is high because it's a tourist destination. You've got to fly from island to island, and every time Johnny Grave wants to send the West Indies to Australia or England, they, got to fly and pay for their players. So the imbalance in finances hits countries or areas like the Caribbean especially hard. Now, England, Australia, and India there's two sources of revenue for cricket boards. One are the kind of internal dynamics of your own region, and then there's the ICC distribution. And it's really that ICC distribution, I think, that people like Johnny Grave are pointing to and saying, can we have a fairer distribution to give us a little more, to help us on our way a little better? And I'm sure the answer to that is yes.
Do you see that happening?
That's a question that no one can answer, and it's beyond my pay grade to be able to answer what India want, what England want, what Australia want. But I do think there's a point to it when the West Indies, and Johnny talks about it, but Michael Holding talked about it all the time. In the 80s, West Indies went to Australia. They had a share of what was coming through in there and came to England. Right, Johnny talked about spending some enormous figure to send West Indies to Australia.
2 million, I
the
think.
women
2 million.
and the men's team the other day, and recoup nothing. Right, so all he wants and all West Indies wants is not to hat out, hand out, but just to be able to put facilities in place. So Joshua Da Silva, Craig Brathwaite, who plays about 6 test matches a year and he doesn't play white ball cricket, they can have facilities to go to practice in. I was chatting to a couple of guys here the other day saying, I can't remember when last I went to Kensington Oval to have a practice session. I'm not allowed in those venues. So to have facilities to fine-tune your game, to compete against the guys here and do the things well requires money. And I think to keep players, keep Shamar Joseph in the Caribbean, keep Alec Athanaze in the Caribbean, keep Kavem Hodge in the Caribbean, be able to pay him is important so that we're not starting over every tour.
I had a chat with Kavem Hodge about 20 minutes before he went
What a
today.
lad.
He just came wandering down. I went over to him and said, well played. Biggest smile on his face after that innings. And you could see in his innings what it meant to him, because he showed great character and great resilience. But just getting him to talk about his 100 moment and facing Mark Wood at 97 miles an hour, you sensed a young man there that took so much from that and was thrilled to be able to show the best of himself on a stage like this. So it is worth fighting for, I think, when you see that.
If you're going to have a thriving test match game, you need competitive games. You've looked at how sides have gone away from home. You know, Ath mentions that series, the Ashes series in 2005, 2 competitive sides going head-to-head. But what we are seeing now is sides really struggling to win away from home. So it is one-sided affairs. That's not good for the game. Why is it happening?
Well, when I left Lords, I didn't think, Test cricket's dead in the West Indies, and I didn't think Test cricket's dead. I thought Test cricket's been pushed to the margins and the edges because of the schedule, that people just don't get out and get into Test series and play county games and go to India early and go to Australia early, get used to conditions. Look at the improvement here in the West Indies. All right, conditions are different, but look at the improvement. Shamar Joseph with cramps. So I had Benedict doing me some stats, actually, and some bullet points. First of all, look at the amount of sides there that have absolutely struggled away from home. You've got England, who have won 1 of their last 8 Test series.
Got my glasses.
Yeah,
now.
please. No, I need glasses here. Give me a second. England have won 1 of their last 9 series in Australia. England have not won a series in the West Indies for 20 years. Australia have not won any of their last 6 series in England. India have won 1 of their last 8 series in England. And West Indies have not won any of their last 9 series in England. So I got to thinking, well, has that always been the case? You've struggled away from home. Then you look at the eras, and actually, in the 1980s, 32.7 was the home win. Look how much the home wins have gone up. So it is easier to win at home, hugely easier. But actually, the away wins have all gone up a fraction. What's gone out of the game is the draw. Sides are just not drawing as much. Maybe it's because of the speed of play, batting, white ball cricket coming into test match cricket. Maybe it's because you're not getting there earlier and getting used to conditions, and when you get behind a game away from home, you just crumble in a heap, as West Indies did at Lords. So which sides are playing well away from home? They're the sides that are playing well away from home. Australia is the only side on there whose percentage win is higher away from home than it is to lose. The others, so South Africa and India, are also playing well away from home. And I did a bit more research. Why are those 3 teams winning away from home? Why are they doing well away from home? They're the same 3 at the top of that. Australia, India, South Africa. Why are they doing well away from home? They all bowl pace over 85 mile an hour. Why is Rob Key trying to change English cricket and move on to winning away from home? Why is he getting pace into this attack? Playing Atkinson, playing Wood, moving away from Anderson. That is why, because he's looking to the future and trying to win in Australia and India, and those stats tell you to do that, you need a bit of extra pace in your attack. There are other things as well, by the way.
What do you take from those numbers?
A lot of nuances in that in terms of depth. Okay, you talk about winning away from West Indies. West Indies went to Australia, and Shamar Joseph, you talk about pace. Shamar Joseph was the one to do the damage. When West Indies won here in 2020, it was on the back of Shannon Gabriel and Jason Holder doing their stuff. Maybe Jason Holder is a bad sort of example. But I do agree with pace. But I also think the other things he's talking about is to develop good batsmanship in all conditions. When it swung at Lords, you said it yesterday, the West Indies historically in the last 10, 15 years have been at sea, so preparation comes into that. I do think fast bowling is a thing, but batting has a level of importance.
How do you see it?
Tours have become very compressed. Take this tour, 3 back-to-back games, no games in between. So I think there are some other reasons why it's become harder to win away from home. Because if you start badly, and Nasser's point is you don't get the prep initially, and so you're often on the back foot at the start of a series, but then it's very hard to get a toe in the door in the series because you don't get any games in between. The next game comes along quickly. Home teams have more resources and they may be able to rest a faster bowler, whereas you're stuck with your squad of 14 or 15. But the 3 or 4 that didn't play in the first test don't get any cricket in between. So the very compressed nature of tours probably slightly plays to the home team's advantage. And I just wonder whether in the era of the World Test Championship, which is a relatively recent phenomenon as well, with points at stake for test matches, whether teams have slightly gone to preparing more home-friendly tracks as well, perhaps. So there are, lots of reasons you could look at, but the bare facts say that it's as difficult to win away from home as it's ever been.
Yeah, sorry, that was just one example. The pacing was one example. There's a lot of things, and the preparation is the key thing for me. You look at England in Australia in 2010 when they did win there under Strauss. They went and played 3 first-class games against seriously high-class opposition, and they got ready for that tour.
But for the reasons that you pointed out, that you ain't going to get that now because the schedule and fixture list is so cramped and so crammed, it is very difficult.
But that's what wound me up leaving Lords and the 2 days after, and why I wanted this chat, is that the people that are pushing test match cricket to the margins and making it difficult to prepare then see a result like that and go, well, we told you so.
Yeah.
Test match cricket is dying, West Indies cricket's dying. Do it a favour, and if then the public decide we don't want test match cricket, give everyone an even chance of being successful. Don't pick and choose who you want to be successful. Give everyone an even chance and let the public decide. It's not for us to decide, ECB, ICC. It's people I see around this ground.